born from a shameful affair, a hidden secret, abandoned in the desert by his own mother. He should have been an outcast, a symbol of betrayal, forever living on the fringes of the world of the gods. And yet, he became the one trusted by every great pharaoh. He was the keeper of the keys to eternity, the sacred protector, and the only God every soul, from king to slave, had to seek out to be guided. His name was Anubis. How did this rejected bastard child become the most merciful guardian of the afterlife? The answer to this riddle lies deep within the mind of the ancient Egyptian, a mind dominated by the eternal cosmic war between Maat and Isfet. Maat was the concept of divine order, truth, and the life-giving rhythm of the Nile. Isfet was chaos, the sterile red desert, and the entropy that constantly threatened to unmake the world. For the Egyptians, life was a desperate daily struggle to uphold this fragile balance. However, they believed that Isfet held the ultimate weapon, death. To them, death was not a peaceful conclusion but a spiritual catastrophe, a victory of chaos where the perfect order of the body collapsed into decay. This biological rotting posed a terrifying spiritual problem because of how they viewed the soul. The Egyptians believed the human spirit was divided into parts, most notably the Ka, life force, and the Ba, personality. While the Ba was free to travel during the day, it was not self-sufficient. It had to return to its specific physical body every night to anchor itself and recharge. If the body was destroyed by decay, if the physical home was lost, the soul would be cast adrift and eventually annihilated. This was the second death, a total erasure of existence, and it was the single greatest fear of the Egyptian people. Into this existential dread stepped Anubis, not as a grim reaper, but as humanity's greatest defense against the void. He was the divine technician who invented mummification, a sacred science designed to halt the chaos of rot and preserve the body as an eternal anchor. His black skin represented not the darkness of the grave, but the fertile black mud of the Nile, a color of resurrection and promise. But his protection went beyond the physical. He was the Lord of the threshold, the only God capable of walking comfortably between the living and the dead. When a soul awoke in the terrifying, demon-haunted geography of the afterlife, Anubis was the first hand reaching out to them. But this perfect protector, this God of compassionate care, was not created this way. His profound, unshakable empathy for the lost was not a divine gift, but a lesson learned. To understand how Anubis became the God who found the lost, we must first understand how he himself was lost, in the isolating darkness of his own origin story. What made Anubis truly essential, however, was his profound philosophy of non-judgment. In the terrifying transition from life to death, he did not ask if you were a sinner or a saint. That trial belonged to his father, Osiris, at the very end of the journey. Anubis's role was purely one of professional, empathetic guidance. He understood that in the face of the infinite dark, a pharaoh is just as frightened as a farmer. Born an outcast himself, he offered a steady, unconditional presence to every traveler, operating on a single merciful truth. Before a soul can be judged, it must first be found, protected, and guided through the dark. His story does not begin in the sacred silence of a tomb, but in the loud, passionate, and dangerously dysfunctional heart of the divine family itself. This is the story of the birth of the gods, the Heliopolitan Ennead. At the beginning there was only the Creator, Ra-Adam. From him he spat forth Shu, the air, and Tefnut, the moisture. They, in turn, gave birth to Geb, the earth, and Nut, the sky. And Geb and Nut had 4 children, 4 siblings who would define the entire cosmos, two brothers and two sisters who would be paired off in divine marriage. First, the benevolent green-skinned king Osiris. He was the god of civilization, of agriculture, of order. He was the one who taught humanity how to make bread and beer, how to write laws. He was, in essence, the very personification of Mayat on earth. He was the good king, the perfect husband. Then his sister, the great goddess Isis. She was great of magic, a being of profound wisdom, fierce loyalty, and unimaginable power. She was the perfect queen, the devoted wife to Osiris. Theirs was a union of light and order. And then there was the other pair. First, Set, the god of the Deshret, the Red Land. He was everything Osiris was not. He was the god of the sterile desert, of violent storms, of chaos, rage, and confusion. He was red-haired, pale-skinned, a being of brute force and unpredictable, jealous passion. He was the necessary chaos, the loyal opposition in the court of the gods. But his loyalty was thin. And finally, the fourth child, the sister who would be his wife, Nephthys. Nephthys is one of the most tragic figures in the entire pantheon. Her name means Lady of the House, but it's a deeply ironic title. She was a goddess of the shadows, of the twilight, of the spaces between things. She was the goddess of mourning, of the unseen, of the hidden. And in her marriage to Set, she was the goddess of profound, aching loneliness. Imagine her world. She is married to the god of chaos, a being who is indifferent at best and brutally cruel at worst. The myths are complex, but they all paint a picture of a marriage that is barren both emotionally and physically. Set was sterile, or perhaps he simply refused to be with her. He was the god of the non-procreative desert, and their union reflected that. It was empty. Meanwhile, just across the divine hall, she watched her sister, Isis. And Isis had everything. She had Osiris, the good, fertile, life-giving king. Their marriage was perfect. Their land, the Black Land, was lush, and soon they would have what Nephthys craved more than anything in the universe, a child, an heir. Nephthys, the Lady of the Shadows, was consumed by a desperate, human, and very dangerous desire. She wanted a child, and she wanted that child to be sired by the god of life, not the god of chaos. She wanted a child by Osiris. What happened next is a story of profound cosmic betrayal, a scandal that would set in motion the end of the Golden Age. The details are whispered in fragments in later texts like those recorded by the Greek historian Plutarch, but the core of the story is always the same. Nephthys concocted a plan. It was a plan born of that aching, gnawing despair. One night she waited. She watched. She knew her husband Set was away, raging in the desert. She knew her sister Isis was occupied. She went to Osiris. How did she do it? Some myths say she used her power over shadows to disguise herself, to cloak herself in the form and scent of her sister, Isis, a magical deception. Others, perhaps more cynically, suggest a more human approach. They say she plied Osiris with wine, a lot of wine, until the god of agriculture, the king of the earth, was too drunk, too clouded in his senses, to know that the woman in his bed was not his wife. The method doesn't matter. The act does. It was a moment of profound betrayal. Osiris betrayed his perfect wife, Isis, and Nephthys betrayed her sister, and, perhaps most dangerously, her violent, unstable husband, Set. And from this secret, drunken, or deceitful union, a child was conceived. The moment of triumph for Nephthys must have immediately turned into one of pure, unadulterated terror. She had what she wanted. But what would she do? She couldn't hide a pregnancy from a husband like Set. His rage was legendary. He wasn't just a god of anger, he was the god of cosmic violence. He was the god who, in a fit of pique, would later tear the eye from his own nephew if he discovered that his barren wife was pregnant and that the child was the spawn of his perfect, hated brother. He wouldn't just kill the child, he would tear the heavens apart. And so Nephthys, the goddess of hidden things, did what she had to do. She hid the pregnancy. She hid the birth. And when the child was born, a boy, a royal child, she did the only thing she felt she could do to save him and to save herself. She abandoned him. She, the goddess of the night, took her newborn son and left him in the wild borderlands, the liminal space between the ordered civilization of the Nile and the chaos of the desert. She abandoned him to fate, praying desperately that Set would never find him. The child was left alone, helpless, an outcast before he even had a name. His very first experience of existence was abandonment. He was, from his first breath, utterly and completely lost. This is the birth of Anubis. Now imagine the divine fallout. The child is gone. But secrets, even among gods, have a way of poisoning the well. The secret of this affair would linger. It would curdle the air, and it would fan the flames of Set's already burning jealousy. This act of betrayal was perhaps the final justification Set needed, the final push that would lead him from jealous rivalry to calculated, cold-blooded murder. But what of the child? He is alone in the reeds. He should have died. He should have been devoured by the very real dangers of the wild. But he was found. The myths tell us he was found by Isis, the very woman who had been so profoundly wronged. Stop and think about that moment. Imagine you are Isis, great of magic. You are the wife of the king, and you find this child. You don't need a DNA test. Your magic, your wisdom tells you exactly who he is and exactly what happened. This is not a foundling. This is the living, breathing, crying proof of your husband's infidelity. This is the product of your own sister's deepest betrayal. This child is a monument to your humiliation. She has every reason in the universe to hate him, to turn her back, to let the crocodiles of the marsh finish the job. It would be just. It would be in a cold, hard way, Ma'at. But Isis is not just a goddess of magic. She is the goddess of motherhood, of compassion. She looks at this helpless, abandoned baby, and she sees not the sin of his father or the betrayal of his aunt. She sees a child who is lost in one of the most powerful, complex, and deeply moving acts of compassion. In all of mythology, Isis stoops down. She parts the reeds, and she lifts the infant into her arms. She does not destroy him. She saves him. She takes him this secret, and she hides him. She raises him as her own. She shields him. She loves him, and she protects him from the all-consuming rage of Set, who, as it turns out, was indeed hunting for him. The legends say Set, in his animal form, sniffed the air, catching the scent of his brother's child. And it was Isis who used her magic to cloak the boy, to make him invisible, to keep him safe. This single act of adoption defines Anubis's entire existence. It is the crucible of his personality. He is a walking contradiction. He is the son of the king, Osiris, but a bastard with no legal claim. He is the son of the goddess of night, Nephthys, but raised by the goddess of light, Isis. He is the nephew of Set, the very chaos his foster mother, Isis, spends her entire life fighting against. He belongs nowhere. He is not a god of the heavens. He is not a god of the earth. He is a creature of the threshold. He is the god of dusk and dawn, the god of the marshes, the god of the borderlands. He is the ultimate divine orphan. How could this not shape him? He grows up in the shadows of the divine court, a secret that everyone knows, but no one speaks of. He is quiet. He is watchful, he is solitary. He sees the passion, the rage, the love, and the hatred of the other gods, but he is not truly a part of it. He is the eternal observer. He doesn't learn the boisterous kingship of Osiris or the raging chaos of Set. He learns the quiet, focused, protective magic of Isis. He learns the profound weeping sorrow of his birth mother, Nephthys. He absorbs both light and shadow. And more than anything, he, who was abandoned and lost, develops a profound, innate, and unshakable empathy for all lost things. He becomes the god of those who have no one else. His tragic childhood forged his character, and it was a character that the universe in its darkest hour would desperately need. The secret of Anubis's birth was the first crack in the foundation of the gods. The murder of Osiris was the earthquake that brought the entire palace down. Set's jealousy, festering for years, fueled by his brother's perfection, and perhaps by the whispered secret of his wife's infidelity, finally boiled over. He could no longer live in his brother's shadow. He had to extinguish the light. But Set was a god of chaos, not stupidity. He was a cunning god. A brute force attack wouldn't work. Osiris was too beloved, too protected. So he devised a plan. He hosted a magnificent feast, a party for all the gods. And at the height of the celebration, he unveiled his masterpiece, a beautiful, ornate chest crafted from the finest cedar and inlaid with gold and silver. It was a work of art. Set, playing the generous host, announced that this chest would be a gift for any god who could fit inside it perfectly. One by one, the gods tried. Thoth was too slender. Geb was too broad. But it was all a ruse. Set had a secret. He had in the dead of night taken the exact measurements of his sleeping brother Osiris. Finally, it was Osiris's turn. Laughing, indulging his brother, the good king stepped into the chest. He lay down, and he fit, perfectly, as if it were made for him. In that instant, Set's face transformed from a smile to a snarl. Before Osiris could move, Set and his co-conspirators, 72 of them, the legends say, slammed the heavy lid shut. They hammered it down, driving long iron spikes into the wood. They didn't just close the box, they sealed it. Osiris, the god of life, was trapped alive in the first sarcophagus. The sounds of his desperate, muffled pounding were drowned out by the roar of Set and his followers as they dragged the chest from the palace. They hauled it to the banks of the Nile, and with a final curse they threw it into the dark, swirling waters. The chest was carried out to the great green, the Mediterranean Sea. Osiris the king was gone, murdered. Set the usurper seized the throne of Egypt. The world was plunged into chaos. Isfet had triumphed. The search for Osiris is one of the great epics of human mythology. Isis, the devoted wife, her world shattered, was relentless. She was joined by her sister Nephthys, who was now consumed by a guilt that was almost suffocating. Her one act of lonely desperation had led directly to this. Her betrayal had cost her sister a husband, and the world its king. And who was the third, silent member of this grieving search party? Anubis, the quiet, watchful bastard son. He, the ultimate outsider, was now at the very center of the tragedy. His father was murdered. His birth mother was a wreck of guilt. His foster mother was a pillar of grieving rage. And his uncle was the murderer. He searched with them. And when Isis, using her great magic, finally located the chest, lodged in a great tamarisk tree in the faraway land of Byblos, Anubis was there. When they brought the body back to Egypt, to a hidden safe place in the marshes, he was there. Isis, a powerful magician, knew she could revive her husband. She breathed life back into his body just for a moment, and in that magical instant, she conceived their own legitimate child, Horus, the Avenger. But Set, the god of chaos, is never defeated that easily. He was hunting, and he found them. He found the hiding place. He found the body of his brother. And in a final horrific desecrating act of Isfet, he fell upon the corpse. This was not just about murder anymore. This was about annihilation. He hacked his brother's body into 14 pieces. He scattered them. One piece here, one piece there. The head in one place, the heart in another. He threw the phallus into the Nile, where it was devoured by a crocodile. This was his final terrible victory. This was not just killing a man. This was ensuring he could never be whole again. This was the second death that all Egyptians feared, enacted upon a god. If Osiris, the king, the god of life, could be unmade, what hope was there for any mortal? The world was truly broken. Isis and Nephthys began their second, even more desperate search. They sailed the Nile weeping, searching every province, every dark, muddy bank for the pieces of their murdered king. And Anubis, the guardian, the silent sun, was with them. They found them, all of them, except for the one. They had 13 pieces, but the body was ruined. It was a rotting, dismembered, incomplete corpse. The soul of Osiris, his Ba, was tethered to this mess. He could not be reborn. He was doomed to be a drifting, powerless shadow. Isfet had won. The natural law of decay, the ultimate chaos, was consuming a god. This is the moment, the pivot point of the entire Egyptian story. Isis, the great magician, knew she could not fix this alone. She needed something new, something that had never been done before. She turned to her adopted son, the quiet one, the god of the shadows, the god of the threshold, the one who understood better than anyone the fragile line between order and chaos, between being and nothingness. This is the moment Anubis invents his purpose. This is where he becomes Anubis. He looked at the ruined, decaying, incomplete body of his father, and he looked at the chaos of Isfet that was claiming it. And with the cold, focused precision of a surgeon and the sacred power of a god, he said no. This is the first mummification, an act of pure, divine, defiant preservation. Anubis, the son of the goddess of mourning, Nephthys, and the god of life, Osiris, took charge of the first funeral. He, with Isis and Nephthys, tenderly washed the dismembered, muddy parts. He purified them. This was not just a physical cleaning, it was a ritual one. Then he began his sacred chemical warfare against decay. He used natron, the natural salt of the desert, to dry the flesh, to pull every last drop of moisture to stop the rot in its tracks. He used sacred oils and resins, perfuming the body, not for vanity, but because their scent was the odor of the gods, a magical act of redivinization. He took the internal organs, the liver, the lungs, the stomach, the intestines, and he preserved them, placing them in the first canopic jars to be protected for eternity. He then, with meticulous care, began to reassemble his father. He took the 13 pieces and laid them out, bringing them together. And for the one missing piece, the phallus, Isis herself used her magic to fashion a new one, a golden magical replacement, so that her husband could be whole. And then Anubis began to rap. This was the final magical act. He bound the pieces together. He wrapped the body over and over in hundreds of yards of linen, interwoven with amulets and spells. He was not just covering a body, he was recreating it. He was creating a new, perfect, eternal form, a ket, a divine shell. He was, in essence, building a house for his father's soul. When he was finished, Osiris was no longer a rotting corpse. He was the first mummy, a sahu, a perfect, eternal, undecaying vessel. Anubis had looked at Set's ultimate act of chaos, and he had answered it with an ultimate act of order. He had defeated Isfet. He had defeated decay. In this one act, Anubis defined his role for the next 3,000 years. He was the patron god of embalmers. The Sema priest, the highest-ranking priest in any funeral, would from that day forward wear a stunning, realistic, jet-black jackal mask. He would wear it not just to honor Anubis, but to become him, to channel his divine, technical, and sacred power, to perform this same miracle for every Egyptian who died. Osiris was whole. His Ba, his soul, now had a home to return to. He was saved. He would go on to become the king of the underworld, the great judge of the dead, but he could never have done it without his quiet, bastard outsider son. Anubis saved his father, and in doing so, he created a pathway to eternity for every human being who would ever live and die on the banks of the Nile. His childhood had made him an expert in being lost. His father's murder made him an expert in being found. Anubis had performed his miracle. He had saved his father Osiris from annihilation. He had defied the chaos of decay, and in doing so had created a pathway. He had built a bridge. By making Osiris whole, he had allowed him to become the first to be justified, the first to be reborn as the eternal king of the Duat, the Lord of the Afterlife. But in saving his father, Anubis had also accepted an eternal burden. He had created a system, and now he had to run it. For every single Egyptian who died, from the most powerful godlike pharaoh to the humblest farmer, the journey Anubis forged for Osiris was now the one they too had to take. This journey was not a peaceful drift into the light. The Duat was a nightmare landscape, a reflection of the Isfet of the Red Desert, but on a spiritual, terrifying scale. It was a realm of 12 hours, or caverns, each one a different, more terrifying trial. There were lakes of burning fire. There were rivers of darkness. There were giant serpents, like the ultimate chaos monster Apep, who constantly threatened to swallow the light. And it was filled with demons. Gatekeepers with names like He Who Lives on Serpents or She Whose Knife is Sharp. A mortal soul, alone, stood no chance. You would be torn apart. You would be lost. You would fail the test, and you would suffer that second death, the annihilation your mummified body was designed to prevent. And so, this is where Anubis's personal story ends and his eternal work begins. He, the god of the threshold, was the only one who could walk these perilous paths unharmed. He was the divine guide, the psychopomp. The moment your Ba left your body in the dark tomb, he would be there. He would meet you. He who knew what it felt like to be abandoned would be the one to ensure you were not. The tomb paintings are explicit. They are beautiful. They show Anubis in his human form with the head of a jackal, tenderly holding the hand of the deceased. He is not dragging them. He is not pulling them. He is leading them. He is a guide, a protector, a divine shepherd. He would lead you past the lakes of fire. He would use his Heka, his magic, to repel the demons. He knew the secret names. He knew the passwords. He was your advocate, your protector, your divine fixer. His job at this stage was pure, unadulterated protection. And as we've established, he never asked if you deserved it. His protection was a universal necessity, not a reward, because in this terrifying, chaotic realm, every soul was equally lost. But Anubis was not leading you to safety. Not yet. He was leading you to the final test. Every path in the Duat, every demon-haunted river, every dark cavern, all led to one single, inevitable destination, the climax of your entire existence and the pinnacle of Anubis's sacred duty. He would lead you to the entrance of a vast, echoing, silent chamber. He would lead you to the hall of two truths. This is it, the hour of truth. Imagine you are that soul. You are ushered by Anubis into this terrifying, silent courtroom. You are standing before your creator, your king, Osiris, and you are surrounded by the 42 assessors of justice, one for every nome or province of Egypt. Each one of them is the arbiter of a specific sin. This is your final exam, and it begins with a spoken test. You must address each of the 42 gods by name and declare your innocence of the sin they represent. This is the negative confession, and it is terrifyingly specific. You must turn to one and say, "Oh, far strider, I have not committed treachery." You must turn to another and say, "Oh, he who eats shadows, I have not stolen. Oh, fire embracer, I have not stolen the offerings of the gods. Oh, he of the cavern, I have not spoken lies. Oh, he who looks backwards, I have not had sex with another man's wife." It goes on and on. I have not made anyone weep. I have not been deaf to the words of truth. I have not been quick-tempered. I have not murdered. I have not polluted the water of the river. It is a complete moral and ethical inventory of your entire life. You must stand before the gods, and you must lie, or at least you must profess your innocence. And in the center of the hall, there is a machine, a divine polygraph that is about to find out if you are telling the truth. This is Anubis's stage, and this is where his motif, his entire character, is made literal. He is not the judge. That is Osiris's job. He is not the prosecutor. That is your own life's deeds. He is not the scribe. That is Thoth's job. He is not the executioner. That, as we will see, is Amit's job. So, who is Anubis? He is the master of the scales. He is the incorruptible, impartial, and utterly focused technician of the divine court. He is the guardian of the process. His role is not to decide your fate. His role is to ensure your fate is decided fairly. He moves toward you, the trembling soul, and from your mummified body, or perhaps from your spiritual form. He gently takes your ib, your heart. To the Egyptians, the heart was not the seat of emotion. That was the stomach. The heart was the seat of your intellect, your conscience, your memory, and your will. It was the hard drive. It was the complete, unedited record of every choice you ever made, every secret thought, every small kindness, and every hidden cruelty of your entire life. Anubis takes this heart, your very essence, and he places it on one of the golden pans of the scale. Then he turns. He produces a single white, ethereal ostrich feather. This is the shuti, the feather of Ma'at. This one, almost weightless feather, is the physical, tangible embodiment of everything Ma'at stands for: order, truth, justice, righteousness, the perfect, correct state of the universe. He places this feather on the other pan of the scale, your entire life weighed against the impossible, weightless, and absolute standard of perfect truth. This is the moment. The entire hall is silent. The 42 gods are watching. Osiris is watching. Thoth is poised to write. Anubis's job in this moment is to make sure the scales are true. He checks the plumb line. He ensures no magic, no trickery from you or from a demon can influence the outcome. And this is where his personal tragedy becomes his greatest divine strength. Why is he the one to do this? Why not Thoth, the god of truth? Why not Horus, the new king? Because Anubis, the divine orphan, the outsider, the bastard son, has no bias. He has no political agenda. He is not invested in the dynastic struggles of Horus and Set. He is not swayed by the passionate judgments of his foster mother, Isis. He belongs to no faction. His loyalty is not to his broken, tragic family. His loyalty is to the system. His loyalty is to the scales. His loyalty is to Ma'at. He is the only god in the pantheon who is truly, absolutely and philosophically impartial. He will not put his finger on the scale for you. He will not be swayed by your wealth. The heart of a pharaoh is weighed with the same cold precision as the heart of a farmer. He will not be swayed by your power. He will not be swayed by your prayers. He is incorruptible. He is the scientific principle of justice made manifest. He doesn't push the scale. He doesn't whisper a prayer for you. He simply watches. He reads the result. He is the guardian of the truth. The heart is heavy. It is heavy of Ma'at. The negative confession was a lie. Anubis sees the result. He does not flinch. He does not weep for you. He does not condemn you. He simply steps back. He has done his job. He has facilitated the truth. Thoth, the scribe, looks at the scale. He makes a notation on his palette. He turns to the great judge Osiris, and he announces the verdict. The heart has been weighed, and it is found heavy. The soul is unrighteous. And then, from the shadows beneath the scales, a creature stirs. Emmet, the eater of hearts, lumbers forward. She has been waiting. She is the executioner. She opens her vast crocodile jaws, and she consumes the heavy heart. This is not a punishment in a fiery hell. Hell, at least, is a form of existence. This is something far, far worse. This is the second death. With your heart, your conscience, your record devoured, your Ba has no anchor. Your Ka has no purpose. You are rendered incomplete forever. You are not tortured. You are erased. You are plunged into eternal, cold, silent non-existence. You simply cease to be. It is the ultimate horrifying end. The one thing every Egyptian from the first dynasty to the last was terrified of. And Anubis just lets it happen. His non-judgment, his impartiality is absolute. He is the guide, but he cannot save you from your own truth. The heart is true of voice. Ma-Keru, Anubis, looks at the scale. He sees the truth. Thoth, the scribe, joyfully announces the verdict. The heart has been weighed, and it is found true. The soul is righteous. In this moment, Anubis's role changes. His duty as the impartial technician is over. He smiles. He steps forward. His duty as the protector, the guide, resumes. He gently, proudly takes the justified soul by the hand. He has guided them from the darkness of the tomb. He has protected them through the chaos of the duat. He has ensured their trial was fair. And now he performs his third and final act of guidance. He personally ushers the soul, this Ma-Keru, this justified spirit, forward. He leads them hand in hand past the scales, past the now slumbering Ammit, and presents them directly to the throne of the great king, Osiris. "This one is true," he announces. Osiris nods and welcomes the soul into his kingdom. The soul is now justified, and Osiris Anen, and is granted eternal life in the Aru, the field of reeds. This is the Egyptian heaven, a perfect, eternal, sun-drenched version of the Nile Valley, where there is no sickness, no hunger, and no death, just endless, blissful, orderly life in the presence of the gods. This is the climax of Anubis's purpose. He is the one who stands quite literally at the pivot point between two eternities, the eternity of nothingness and the eternity of bliss. And he, the bastard son, the orphan, the outsider, is the one who holds the key. This role also forced him to reconcile his own complex personal conflicts. What happened when a soul came before him who in life had been a follower of his hated uncle Set? What about a soul who had participated in the chaos, who had done Isfet? The texts are silent, but the implication of his role is deafening. It would not matter. Anubis's loyalty was not to his family. That broken, chaotic, passionate family was the source of his trauma. His loyalty was to the system. His loyalty was to the scales. His loyalty was to Ma'at. If a follower of Set had somehow lived a life where his heart was as light as the feather, Anubis would have passed him. If a high priest of Isis, his own foster mother, had lived a life of secret corruption, his heart heavy with sin, Anubis would have stepped back and let Ammit devour it. This is what makes him so terrifying and so beautiful. His outsider status, his liminal tragedy, was not his weakness. It was the very thing that qualified him for the most important job in the universe. It was the source of his perfect, incorruptible, and in its own way deeply merciful impartiality. His climactic role was not just at the scales. His entire purpose was a climax that began with the embalming. His mastery of preservation was the test that proved his mastery of the transition. In the face of Set's chaos, which sought to unmake the body, Anubis responded with a craft, a science, a ritual that preserved the body. And in the face of life's moral chaos, which sought to unmake justice, Anubis responded with the cold, hard, perfect, and impartial truth of the scales. He is the ultimate bridge. He is the God who, having been born in the cracks between worlds, became the only one strong enough to stand there forever, holding the entire system of life, death, and resurrection together. This, then, was the climax of the soul's journey, a terrifying, impartial, and sacred trial, overseen by the one God who could be trusted. With the trial over, the soul's fate, either annihilation or eternity, was sealed. Osiris was the king who passed sentence, but Anubis was the one who made the entire process possible, and having established this eternal system, his role was now cemented. He would not fade into the background. Instead, his presence would become woven into the very fabric of Egyptian life, in their art, their rituals, and their tombs, as a permanent and comforting promise of his protection. The trial is over. The soul is justified. The great, terrifying cosmic machinery of judgment has completed its work, and the result is bliss. Eternity. Ma'at has been upheld. And what of the God who made it all possible? What of the quiet, impartial technician who held the scales? This is where Anubis finds his final, permanent, and most profound purpose. With his father Osiris, now firmly enthroned as the benevolent, green-skinned king of the underworld, and his half-brother Horus, having defeated Set to become the king of the living on earth, the divine order is restored. But Anubis, he does not fade into the background. He does not take a minor role. He becomes, in many ways, the most essential part of the new system. He becomes the eternal gatekeeper, the guardian, the one who ensures the entire system works day after day for every soul for the next 3,000 years. He never vied for the throne. That was Horus's fight. He never sought to rule the dead. That was Osiris's burden. Anubis, the eternal outsider, found his perfect, permanent place at the threshold. He is the God of all transitions. He is the God of the tomb door. He is the God of the opening of the mouth ceremony, the one who reawakens the senses of the dead. He is the God of the perilous gates of the Duat. And he is the God of the door to the hall of judgment. To get anywhere in the afterlife, you had to go through Anubis. He was not a god you worshipped with loud, boisterous festivals in the bright sunlight. He was the God you trusted. He was the God you developed a deep, personal, and lifelong relationship with, because you knew from the day you were born that he was the one you would have to meet at the end. He was, in essence, the most important God in your personal religious life. And his legacy, his eternal presence, wasn't just an abstract myth. It was written into the very stone of the tombs. It was painted on the papyri. It was molded into the jars that held your organs. It was quite literally everywhere. If you were a wealthy Egyptian, your single most important possession, the one thing you would spend a fortune on, was your Book of the Dead. This wasn't a book in the way we think of it. It was a Pareim Heru, a book of coming forth by day. It was a collection of over 200 magical spells, a divine cheat sheet, a sacred GPS for the afterlife. It was your guide, your passport, and your weapon. And it was filled with Anubis. He is there in spell 17 as the great cat of Heliopolis, protecting the Persea tree of life. But his most vital role is in the spells of preservation and passage. Let's look at spell 151. This is the spell for the head of a man in the tomb. It was a magical invocation often written on the mummy's mask itself, designed to protect the most important part of the body. And who does it invoke? It begins with a direct plea. Hail to you, O you who are watchful, O Anubis. The spell is a series of short, powerful declarations by other gods, Horus, Thoth, Isis, all offering their protection. But it is Anubis who is the gatekeeper, the one they are appealing to. He is the protector of the body. Then there is the famous vignette for spell 30b, the spell to prevent the heart from creating opposition. This was the deep-seated fear that your own heart, your own conscience, would betray you on the scales. And who is the god overseeing this? Anubis. He is the one who ensures the heart is silent, that the process is fair. But more than just the spells, his image was a spell in itself. In ancient Egypt, to see something, to depict it, was to make it real. Every single Book of the Dead, every single papyrus at the climax of the story shows the same unchanging scene, the weighing of the heart. And who is the star of that scene? Who is the one depicted with the most agency, the one who is doing the sacred work? It is Anubis. He is the one adjusting the scales. He is the one watching the plumb line. He is the one, as we saw, who then leads the justified soul to the throne. By painting this scene on your papyrus, by burying it with you, you were not just hoping for a fair trial. You were magically guaranteeing it. You were ensuring that Anubis would be there for you, that he would perform his sacred duty. His image was a magical contract. Now let's look at the body itself. As we know, in the mummification process, the internal organs were removed to prevent decay. The heart, the conscience, was left inside. But the liver, lungs, stomach, and intestines were removed, washed in palm wine, dried in natron, and preserved just like the body. But they couldn't just be discarded. They were essential parts of you. They had to be protected. So they were placed in 4 sacred containers, the canopic jars. And these jars were not just jars, they were divinities. The organs were placed under the protection of the 4 sons of Horus, 4 minor gods who were born from a lotus flower and served their father, the king of the living. Each son had a specific role. Imseti, the human-headed one, guarded the liver. Hapi, the baboon-headed one, guarded the lungs. Duamutef, the jackal-headed one, guarded the stomach. And Kabesnuef, the falcon-headed one, guarded the intestines. Each of these gods in turn was protected by a goddess, Isis, Nephthys, Neith, and Serket. It was a complex system of divine insurance. But who was the overall manager of this entire process? Who was the divine protector of the protectors? Anubis. His own MUT fetish, his symbol as the embalmer, was placed over the chest of jars, and one of the 4 guardians, Duamutef, even wore his face. The jackal head on the canopic jar was a direct link to Anubis, a sign that the stomach, the seat of emotion and digestion, was under his personal watchful care. He was, in every sense, the Lord of the embalming place. He didn't just preserve your outer shell, he guarded your innermost self piece by piece. For thousands of years, we knew Anubis from these two-dimensional paintings. We knew him from the texts, but in 1922, when Howard Carter breached the final sealed doorway into the treasury of the boy king Tutankhamun, the world finally met Anubis, face to face. Imagine that moment. Carter, holding a candle, peers into the dark. And the first thing that greets him, the first guardian he sees, is this: a life-size, pitch-black jackal, his golden-leafed ears pricked, his body tensed as if ready to pounce. He wasn't representing Anubis. He was Anubis. He had been sitting there in the dark in total silence for 3,300 years, doing his job, guarding the king's sacred canopic chest which lay just behind him. This statue is one of the most powerful and moving works of art ever created. It is not a grim reaper. It is a guard dog. It is the ultimate expression of loyalty. It is the physical, tangible, and terrifyingly beautiful manifestation of Anubis as he who is upon his mountain. But this statue held another secret, a seal. When Carter examined the tomb, he found seals everywhere. The doors were sealed with clay impressions, the ancient Egyptian equivalent of a high-tech security system. And the most common seal, the one used to protect the most sacred areas, was the necropolis seal. This seal depicts Anubis as the jackal, crouching protectively over a stylized image of 9 bound captives. These 9 figures represented the 9 bows, the traditional collective name for all the enemies of Egypt: the Nubians, the Libyans, the Asiatics, everyone who was other. What does this seal mean? It is a piece of powerful, sympathetic magic. It is a statement. It says, Anubis, the great jackal, is here, and he is trampling, he is dominating, he is negating all the forces of chaos, the enemies, that might try to enter this sacred, orderly Meshat space. Anubis was not just a guide. He was a bouncer. He was the divine security guard, standing at the door, ensuring that the chaos of the outside world, the Isfet, could never get in to disturb the eternal sleep of the king. This was his legacy in art, but his legacy in ritual was even more profound and more intimate. This is the Sema priest, the one who sets in order. He was the high priest of the funerary cult. He was the director of the sacred play. And on the day of the funeral, he would not just pray to Anubis, he would become him. The most important ritual of the entire funeral was the wepra, the opening of the mouth ceremony. This was a complex, powerful, and deeply moving piece of theater. The mummy, your body, was now a perfect, eternal Sahu, but it was inert. It was a beautiful, preserved thing. It couldn't see, it couldn't hear, it couldn't speak, it couldn't eat the offerings of bread and beer that your cause so desperately needed. It was a house with no doors or windows. The opening of the mouth ceremony was the ritual that fixed this. It was the moment the senses were magically reawakened. The Sema priest, wearing the heavy, godlike Anubis mask, would approach the upright mummy. He would be carrying a set of sacred tools, an adze, a kind of ritual blade, a chisel, and other instruments. And then, while chanting the sacred spells, he would touch them to the mummy's face. He would touch the adze to the mummy's mouth, and he would chant, I open your mouth for you, that you may speak with it. I open your eyes for you, that you may see with them. I open your ears for you, that you may hear with them. He would touch the legs so they could walk. He would touch the arms so they could move. In this moment, the priest was Anubis, performing his final act of creation. He was not just an embalmer. He was an animator. He was the one who, having preserved the house, now walked through and unlocked every single door and window, allowing the soul to use its body once more. He was the one who quite literally gave you your life back. Imagine the power of this for the grieving family. They are watching this. They are seeing a God, their God, the black jackaled guardian, personally attending to their loved one, personally guaranteeing their senses will work in the afterlife. This is not a God of grim endings. This is a God of new, functional, and active beginnings. This is a God of profound practical care. This was his role in the tomb, but he even had a role in the streets. The great mysteries of Osiris, which were celebrated annually at Abydos, the god's sacred cult center, were not quiet, somber affairs. They were massive, public, passionate plays. They were the Super Bowl of Egyptian religion. The entire population would participate in reenacting the great myth, the triumphant rule of Osiris, his brutal murder by Set, the desperate search by Isis and Nephthys, and his final glorious resurrection. And who was a central heroic character in this play? Anubis. The crowds would watch as the priest, playing Anubis, would loyally search alongside his foster mother and birth mother. They would watch as he, the divine embalmer, would perform his sacred ritualistic work on the body of Osiris. He was the loyal son. He was the fixer. He was the hero who, through his technical skill and quiet devotion, made the resurrection possible. He was not just a god for the dead. He was a god for the living. He was a public symbol of loyalty, devotion, and the ultimate triumph of order, Ma'at, over the forces of chaos, Isfet. And in all of this, in his art, his rituals, and his festivals, Anubis finally finds the perfect resolution to his own tragic origin. His duality, his in-betweenness, was not his curse, it was his qualification. Because he was a bastard son with no claim to the throne, he had no political agenda. He could be truly impartial. Because he was raised by Isis, order, but born of Nephthys, shadow, he understood both worlds. Because he was an outsider, he became the protector of all outsiders. And the newly dead are the ultimate outsiders. Because he himself was once abandoned and lost in the marshes, he became the God who would never abandon a lost soul in the darkness of the Duat. His personal tragedy was not a footnote to his story. It was his resume. It was the very thing that made him the only God who could do his job. He transformed his existential isolation into a profound, universal, and eternal service. He is the great reconciler. He reconciles the body with the soul. He reconciles the living with the dead. And he reconciles the horrific, chaotic fact of death with the serene, eternal promise of Ma'at. He guides the pharaoh, who is a living God, with the same gentle, black-furred hand as he guides the commoner, who is just a man. Because he knows with an intimacy that no other God can claim, that in the end, they are both exactly the same. They are just lost souls, and they are all just looking for the way home. And so for 3,000 years, his image was everywhere. He was on the tomb walls, on the papyri, in the sacred rituals, and in the hearts of the people. He was the most intimate and essential of all the gods. We have seen what his story was. We have seen what he did and how he was worshipped. But now we must ask the most important question of all. Why? Why this story? Why this strange, beautiful, and complex figure? To truly understand his legacy, we must now move past the myth and into the deep, timeless meaning. So, let's pause. Let's step back from the story, from the grand, passionate, cosmic drama of murder, magic, and resurrection. We have just walked a journey of 3,000 years. We have seen a God born from a secret, find his purpose in a tragedy, and take his eternal place as the guardian of humanity's most terrifying transition. We've seen the what, but why? Why this story? Why did it last for 3 millennia, a span of time that makes the Roman Empire look like a long weekend? Why does this quiet, solitary, jackal-headed god, this divine orphan, still to this day resonate so deeply within us? We've seen the myth, but now we must look at the meaning. We must analyze the profound psychological and timeless philosophy that Anubis represents. This is not just a story about a god, it's a story about us. It's a story about how we, as humans, have chosen to confront the dark. And to understand this, we have to look at the 3 great interlocking themes of his existence: the power of his iconography, the tragedy of his liminality, and the radical, beautiful compassion of his core motif. First, let's look at his role, at the metaphors hidden in his sacred job description. Anubis is the god of 2 distinct practical functions: embalming and guiding. Let's start with embalming. We have seen how he invented it to save his father. But what does that act truly mean? On the surface, it's a technical craft, a set of chemical and surgical procedures. But to the Egyptian mind, it was a profound act of philosophy. Embalming is, at its core, an act of defiance. It is a refusal to accept the final victory of Isfet, of chaos. It is a human, or in this case divine, hand intervening in the natural, terrifying process of decay. It is looking at the ultimate chaotic unraveling of the body and saying, as Anubis did, no. This is not just about preserving a corpse. It is a metaphor for preparation. It is a statement that the transition into the unknown, into the afterlife, is a journey one must prepare for. This is not a denial of death. It is a management of it. It is an attempt to impose order, ma'at, on the most disorderly event of our existence. By preserving the body, Anubis was not just saving a thing. He was preserving an identity. He was ensuring that the ket, the physical anchor, would be there, perfect and eternal, so that the ba, the soul, would never be homeless. It was an act of profound practical love. It was a promise, made in linen and salt, that you will not be forgotten, you will not be erased, you will not unravel. Then there is his second role, the guide. If embalming was the preparation for the journey, this was the journey itself. And this, too, is a metaphor. The Egyptians were one of the first cultures to so vividly, so meticulously map their afterlife. The Duat was not a vague, cloudy heaven. It was a place, a landscape with rivers, gates, guardians, and a specific geography. And Anubis was the guide. He was the one who knew the map. What does this represent? It represents our deep-seated human need for expertise in a time of crisis. When you are facing a terrifying, life-altering event, a complex legal battle, a frightening medical diagnosis, a deep psychological crisis, what do you crave? You crave a professional. You crave a calm, steady, experienced hand. You don't necessarily want a weeping relative. You want the surgeon who has done this 1,000 times. You want the lawyer who knows every loophole. You want the therapist who can navigate the dark, winding corridors of your own mind and lead you safely to the other side. That is Anubis. He is the embodiment of divine, sacred professionalism. He is the calm, quiet expert in the dark. He is the one who has walked this path 10 million times before. He knows the demons' names. He knows the passwords. He will not panic. He will not falter. He will simply get you through it. He is the ultimate crisis manager. And this combination, the loving preparation of the embalmer and the calm professionalism of the guide, creates a God of profound practical comfort. And this brings us to his iconography, His form. Why a jackal? This is not a random choice. It is a masterpiece of psychological and theological symbolism, layered with meaning. Let's start with the literal. As we've seen, his earliest title was He Who Is Upon His Mountain. The Egyptians, practical as ever, saw the real physical jackals and wild dogs pacing the cliffs of the western desert where they buried their dead. These were a real threat. They were scavengers who would dig up shallow graves. The Egyptian mind, in an act of pure genius, co-opted this threat. They reasoned that the greatest jackal, the Alpha, the divine archetypal king of all jackals, must be the one who could protect the dead from all the lesser ones. So, Anubis is, in his most primal form, the divine guard dog. He is the eternal sentinel sitting on the high ground, forever watching over the necropolis, ensuring no one and no thing will disturb the sacred sleep below. But the symbolism goes so much deeper. Jackals are liminal creatures. This is the key. They are not creatures of the day like the hawk of Ra. They are not creatures of the deep night like the owl. They are creatures of the threshold. They hunt at dusk and at dawn, the two times of day that are neither day nor night, the in-between times. They live at the edge. They patrol the harsh, blurry line where the fertile black civilization of Kemet Mayat dissolves into the sterile red chaos of Deshret Isfet. Anubis is this edge. He is the god of the threshold. He is the one who can stand perfectly balanced with 1 foot in the world of the living and 1 foot in the world of the dead. He is the god of the doorway. He is the one who meets you at that border and is the only one who can safely escort you across. His very species defines his job description. And then there's the simplest, most human-level connection of all. He is a canine. For tens of thousands of years, what has been humanity's first and most loyal non-human friend? The dog. The wolf that came into the light of the fire. The dog is the ultimate symbol of loyalty, of protection, of unquestioning devotion. A dog is the creature that will follow you, protect you, and love you without judgment. Anubis is the divine, eternal expression of that bond. He is the faithful hound of the gods. He is the ultimate loyal companion. He is the one being who, when your entire world has abandoned you, will not leave your side. This is a profound source of comfort. The Egyptians were not just being metaphorical. They loved their dogs. They mummified them, buried them in their own necropolises. To them, the idea that the guardian of the afterlife was a being with the loyal, familiar, and protective soul of a canine was the ultimate reassurance. And finally, his color, the most important and most misunderstood clue of all. His color is black, a deep, absolute, unnatural black. To our modern, Western-influenced minds, black is the color of evil, of death, of mourning, of the void. We see his black form and we think, Grim Reaper. This is a complete 180-degree inversion of the truth. To the Egyptian, black was the single most beautiful, hopeful, and life-giving color in the universe. Why? Because their entire world was defined by 2 colors. Red, the color of the Deshret, the vast, sterile, life-killing desert. Red was the color of Set, of chaos, of Isfet, and black, the color of the Kemet, the rich, dark, fertile, wet silt that the Nile, their mother, would deposit on the land every single year. This black mud was the source of all life. It was the soil from which all crops grew. It was the color of fertility, of potential, of life itself. By making Anubis black, the Egyptians were not saying he was a god of darkness. They were making the most profound theological statement imaginable. They were saying that death is not the red land. Death is the black land. To be placed in the hands of Anubis, the black jackal god, was not to be cast into a sterile void. It was to be planted. It was to be placed back into the fertile, divine, life-giving soil, like a seed, so that you too could be reborn, whole, complete, and eternal. His blackness is not a threat. It is a promise. It is the ultimate symbol of hope. This brings us to the second great theme, the tragedy of liminality. We have seen his power. Now we must ask, where did it come from? His power, his unique qualification, came directly from his pain. His strength was forged in his tragedy. His story, as we know, begins with a secret, a scandal. He is the illegitimate son of a god of life, Osiris, and a goddess of shadows, Nephthys. He is abandoned by his mother, out of fear. He is hunted by his uncle, Set, out of jealousy. He is rescued and adopted by his aunt, Isis, the very woman his parents betrayed. He is, from his very first breath, the divine orphan, the royal child, as his name Anpu implies, who has no royal claim. Think for a moment what this does to a person. To grow up in the divine court surrounded by these massive, passionate, warring egos, but to be none of them. He is the ultimate outsider. He is the quiet, watchful, solitary one, standing in the shadows of the great hall. He is not a god of kingship like Osiris and Horus. He is not a god of passionate chaos like Set. He is not a god of fierce maternal magic like Isis. He is not even a god of weeping, guilty shadow like his mother, Nephthys. He is a blend. He is a creature of the cracks, the spaces between. He is not this or that. He is both and he is neither. This is his liminality. He is trapped existentially between worlds. And this profound, isolating personal tragedy is his single greatest qualification. This is the key. Why him? Why was he the one chosen for the two most sensitive jobs in the universe, embalming the dead and judging the heart? Because he is the only one who could be trusted. Because he is the only one who is truly impartial. Think about it. Could you trust Horus to be the master of the scales? Horus, the passionate, vengeful son, locked in an 80-year war with his uncle? He is defined by his bias. Could you trust Isis, the great mother whose love is so fierce it can bend reality? She would put her finger on the scale for everyone she loved. Could you trust Osiris, the king who was murdered by his own brother? He is the very symbol of a political faction. No, you need an outsider. You need the one God who has no political agenda. You need the one God who has no dynasty to protect, no throne to claim. You need the one God whose loyalty is not to a person or a family, that broken, tragic family that caused him so much pain, but to the system. Anubis's loyalty is to the process. His devotion is to the scales. His God is Ma'at. He takes his personal existential tragedy, his isolation, his in-betweenness, and he transforms it. He turns a personal wound into a universal virtue. He turns his isolation into impartiality. He turns his loneliness into empathy. He is the God of the lost because he was the first one lost. He doesn't just tell you the way, he knows the way because he has walked in that same lonely dark. He doesn't look down on the trembling soul with divine pity. He looks at it with a profound shared understanding. This is a stunning modern psychological idea, the idea of the wounded healer, the idea that our greatest strengths often come from our deepest pains. The Egyptians understood this 5,000 years ago. They understood that the only one qualified to guard the lost is the one who was lost himself. And this at last brings us to his central, defining, and most beautiful gift to the world. His core motif, no judgment, only guidance, because all souls are lost. This is perhaps the most radical and merciful idea in Egyptian religion. Let's be clear. The Egyptians believed fervently in a final judgment. The weighing of the heart was the single most important event of your entire existence. The terror of Ammit, the devourer, was very, very real. A final, terrifying, meritocratic judgment was coming. But Anubis represents the radical idea that the process of guidance should be separate from the act of judgment. This is a distinction that most other religions blur. We think of a single figure at the pearly gates who is both the guide and the judge. Anubis separates these roles. He is not the judge. He is your advocate. He is your public defender. He is the one who gets you to the courthouse safely. He is the one who ensures you get a fair trial. This is an act of profound democratic mercy. Osiris's judgment is meritocratic. You get what your heart has earned. But Anubis's guidance is democratic. Everyone gets it. Think about what this means. It means that in the Egyptian worldview, no matter how you lived, no matter how flawed or sinful or broken you were, you deserved to be treated with dignity in your death. You deserved a guide. You deserved to be protected on your journey. You deserve to have your case heard fairly, without prejudice. Anubis is the embodiment of that due process. Let's go back to that modern analogy. He is the divine hospice worker. When a person is in their final terrifying moments, what do they need? Do they need a stern judge at their bedside, listing their life's failures? Do they need someone to condemn them to make them afraid? Or do they need a calm, compassionate professional? Someone to hold their hand, someone to manage their pain, someone to speak to them softly, to reassure them, to be a steady, non-anxious presence, someone to make the transition as peaceful and as dignified as possible. That is Anubis. His role is not to judge. His role is to ease the passage. His compassion is not the hot, passionate compassion of Isis. It is a cool, quiet, professional, and universal compassion. He is the mercy within the system. He is the God who recognizes that when you are in the dark, confused, and terrified, the first thing you need is not a lecture. The first thing you need is a hand to hold. This is the gift of Anubis. It is not the gift of eternal life that is Osiris's to give. It is the gift of dignity in death. This powerful and humane concept did not remain confined to the Nile Valley. When the Greeks encountered Egyptian civilization, they saw a reflection of their own guide, Hermes, in Anubis. This fusion created Hermanubis, a deity who offered guidance not as a transaction like the ferryman Charon, but as a sacred duty. The Romans later embraced this comforting figure through the mystery cults, spreading the worship of Isis and her loyal jackal-headed son from Pompeii to the far reaches of Britain. In the modern era, while popular culture often misinterprets him as a monster, works like Neil Gaiman's American Gods restore his true dignity as a dedicated tradesman of the dead. Today, Anubis lives on as the archetype of the compassionate professional in times of crisis. The emergency doctor, the hospice nurse, or the funeral director, anyone who steps into the chaos of human suffering with calm expertise to say, "I am here and I will get you through this." We have traveled a long road to understand a God born of scandal and abandonment who transformed his own isolation into a universal shield for humanity. Anubis did not let his tragic origins define him. Instead, he used his experience as an outsider to become the ultimate impartial guardian. He invented the art of preservation to defy the chaos of decay, presided over the scales of truth with absolute fairness, and became the only hand trusted to guide souls through the terrifying darkness. He did not seek the power of the throne, but chose the quiet importance of the threshold, ensuring that the transition from life to death was handled with dignity. Ultimately, the wisdom of Anubis rests on a single profound truth: no judgment, only guidance. He teaches us that in our moments of greatest vulnerability, what we need is not a judge to condemn us, but a steady companion to lead the way. His story is a lesson in the power of neutral, compassionate support, proving that the most essential role is often the quietest one. He represents the comforting reality that death strips away all worldly titles, leaving us all equally in need of help. Anubis is not a distant deity of fear, but the faithful hound standing guard in the shadows, offering the eternal promise that no matter how dark the tomb or how lonely the journey, we will never have to walk alone.